Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information. Hayden, welcome back to the podcast, mate.
Thanks for having me, Owen. It's always a pleasure.
It's always good to chat in Melbourne too.
Yeah, it's always just a couple degrees colder, but it's always nice to come visit. I find Melbourne a strange place because it's like there's millions of people here and I don't know any of them, but they're kind of Australians too. It's like a strange, I don't know. I'm like, you're all part of my country and I don't know who any of you are. I always have that feeling when I kind of come through Melbourne.
I love that. It is busy when you walk around the Melbourne CBD too. There's a lot of people. There's people everywhere.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, it gets hot in the studio, so hopefully we can heat it up for you a bit. But today we're going to be talking about your journey. We're going to talk about things that you're building, things that you've built at Pearler. We're going to talk about automating investing and finances and that type of thing. Last time you and I spoke, it was in the Australian Investors podcast in Sydney.
Yep.
We talked about a whole bunch of different stuff. You mentioned some of your more frugal ways, which were quite interesting. And I think they were just illuminating into the way that you manage money historically, how you think about money, its importance in your life and that type of thing. How has that changed for you?
That's a good question. I was actually asking myself that a lot a few weeks ago, actually. It was like, where's the point where it just changes? Because I'm not going to probably be taking to the one people pick on me for is the whole half-used toilet rolls from hotels, right? Like at some point I must stop that. And what I realized was I feel like for me, it's as long as if it's trivial, I'll always feel like I'll do it. Or if I feel like there's a growth or learning opportunity there, I'll always do that too. Because, I feel like if it's new, it's different. If I'm trying to get a sense of the world, then I really care about it. And I noticed this because about 3 weeks ago, I drove home and I took a toll road. And I'd never really take toll roads much, and I was like, it's $6, which is like a lot of money for just like saving 10 minutes. And it's very unlike me to try and save 10 minutes. But I kind of realized like I have a lot to do today. But more importantly, I've already spent like 12 years not taking toll roads. Like I feel like I have no more human developmental things to learn from sitting in traffic. Like I've been there, It's like at some point, everyone's been like, okay, I've flown economy 200 times now. At some point, you're like, I bought the crappy cheese that many times, and I don't need to get harder from that. So I think it's really about that. Is do I feel like I just have nothing left to gain as a human learning growth? And but there's always some things, like the big one we've been talking about in the company recently was we had an offsite in the Gold Coast, and I went to Brisbane after before going somewhere else, and I bought some peanut butter because recently I got really into peanut butter with putting it on top of oats. It's like a late discovery in life, right? Yeah. And I'm like, it's the nicest thing, sweet oats, like fatty peanut butter. But it was a nice jar, like the expensive peanut butter. It was on special, $6, and I didn't want to waste it. And I didn't really have baggage space to take it with me. So I thought, it'd be an interesting exercise. I was like, I found a bush in Brisbane, bush in Brisbane, because I'm going back there in December, and I sealed up the jar and I put it in the bush. And I'm going to go back in a couple months and see if it's there, because I didn't want to throw it out. That felt wasteful. No one wanted to take it at the time. And if it is, then I don't really care about $6. I'm like 31. I've been working for a long time, but I feel like I'd want to understand if that was a smart trade-off. If I get there and it's covered in ants or something, which I don't think it will be, or if it's gone, it means, someone's found it and cleaned it up, then I've learned something about the world and like where the push and pull is on that. I feel like that's what motivates me more than like specific dollars. Because if I feel like there's nothing to learn, I'm like, it's $2 left of peanut butter. It can just, go in the bin. The world's not perfect.
Wow, this is like a treasure hunt is now on. If you can find
if people have been telling me, there's probably a couple of people in Brisbane now who might be like
on the
keeping
lookout.
An eye out. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's it's going to be fun to see if people find out where.
I just hope I find it before anyone else, humans or pests.
So you will go back later this year, and we will find out for sure.
Yeah, left it there late October. I'll try and pick it up late December.
Do you think, like, coming back to the tolls one, which is probably more relatable to people?
Yep.
Obviously, your role, like your title at Pearl is Chief Technology Officer, right? Like CTO, which is like the top of the ranks, right? Co-founder, whatever. Do you buy the idea about like a growth mindset, quote unquote, like as in I could save 10 minutes and 10 minutes of my time is worth X dollars per hour, or I could sit in traffic. I could just go back and work for an extra 6 minutes at home or whatever to make up the difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a nuanced answer, but generally I would lean towards the side of I consider that mostly a false economy, because I think not all time is equally valuable, and you cap out on some things. Like I remember reading a couple of years ago that like a typical person only has about 2 hours a day of like high quality creative work in them, like say writing or drawing or something like that. And then they just like cap out. So you have different kinds of capacities for work, right? Like you can do a certain amount of manual labor. Your day's made up of different, bits of burn. It's like the stomach, you got dinner and then you got room for dessert. It's like one tank, but it feels like, you've got space for something else. So for me, I think it's more nuanced. It's like, well, if I've just had a long day and I'm tired, 10 minutes in the car, what am I going to do? I'm not going to get home and bash something out. Maybe I need that downtime. So there are times where I'll be like, yeah, my time does matter. But I'm also in tech, so I've learned how to use downtime quite a lot. So if there's a longer drive, I'll call someone I need to call. If I'm taking a longer route on a plane ride, I'll do some work on my laptop. So there's a bias there where I think I'm able to make good use of wasted time. Some people kind of can't, if someone's just doing things that need a certain type of thing. But in general, I don't really subscribe to that whole like I earn X dollars an hour.
Yeah, mental accounting kind of. It's like there's something over here that I could be doing to be productive. So if I did more of that, yeah, okay, I get you. So if that's kind of the finances generally, how has your strategy to money changed, or if like it's been any big rocks in the last couple of years?
I'd say the strategy's always just been work hard and make money while I'm young and don't have kids and seem to be in a good sector, which is like software generally, right? Like not quite my Google friends, and startups a different thing, but it's a lucky space to be in. We get to work on our laptops and have relatively okay prospects. So it's just been work hard and get stuff done. I'd say the biggest change practically to maybe some of the decisions along the way has been that like I bought an apartment earlier this year. So it's kind of gone from just kind of hardcore cash and ETFs to like thinking about housing as part of the portfolio. And then what am I going to do with the money at offset? Do I keep it there? Do I invest it? That's probably been the biggest 12-month change if I wound back the clock.
Because you're doing the Aussie Fire podcast with Dave, and Dave talks about like debt recycling strategies or, using that part of your wealth really effectively. And I know it worked really effectively for him. Is that something that you pursue? Like debt recycling
absolutely.
Or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I was really kind of anti home ownership I was just earning like working like 1 or 2 jobs and storing cash and a bit of investments from like 24 to 30 basically. And I never really wanted a house because I was like, houses are expensive, apartments don't seem to grow. I don't really want to buy into a strata scheme and then like just all this stuff. I don't want an investment property because I've seen bad tenants. But I think earlier this year I was like, well, I probably want to buy something eventually. Interest rates are high, which is helpful for someone who has saved a lot, because I'm not at the limit of my servicing by any stretch. But then what did tick it over was conversations with Dave about the debt recycling, because I thought, hey, here's an opportunity where I can buy a home and also invest. Funnily enough, I actually thought about it the other way, which is I had investments and I thought the debt recycling in a sense actually just brings my mortgage rate down, because like if I'm investing anyway, but I can make the mortgage debt deductible, then instead of it being 6.1%, it's like 3.9% or something like that. And then I thought, so then the question was, do I want to expose myself to the unit market for 3.9% servicing? And I was like, the math is still a bit like on the edge, but I was like, might as well, if I'm going to do it, now's the time to do it. But yeah, I think debt recycling has definitely been a big topic this year. And a few people in the company are kind of like, I can't talk about it too loud, or they're kind of like, no, Hayden's talking about debt recycling again. He's got a problem.
But I feel like we did a few episodes earlier this year with like financial advisors and stuff. And it was easily the most talked about thing in our community. Like I would even say ever in the Rask history. It's been, I think because there's been this kind of awakening that, well, interest rates are high, but they might not be high forever, and you can do stuff with the other parts of your money. And obviously, financial independence is burning away in the background because people are like, well, I do want to kind of put my finances on like supercharge, even if it's for 10 years. I'm willing to do that, or 15 years until I can retire, even if it's 5 years early, 10 years early, whatever. So that's been really, really popular. I'm curious because we're going to talk about some of the things that you've built over the time.
Yeah.
In terms of like your experience so far, just even learning about debt recycling and all the things that go in, the different, it's one of those areas where it's like slightly murky enough that people don't fully always understand, but it's once you do it, it's kind of makes a lot of sense. Is that something that you can solve with technology?
And education, yeah, both for sure. I mean, you'd get the education part for sure because you can make technology and then if people don't understand it, they just won't touch it. But you're right, it's so hard. Like I think I first heard about debt recycling when I got dragged to a Peter Thornhill talk back in 2019. And I was sitting, we just started Pearl. I knew nothing about money. And he was talking, he had the diagrams with the arrows and I was just like, well, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. It's like you take this and you take that loan and you do that and then this pays off that. And I was like, and for years I thought about it in the back of my head and I didn't get it. And one day I got it, but that took, I reckon, 15 hours of active thinking over years, right? Yeah. But in terms of technology, definitely, because once I understood it, the next question was like, how do I do it? You know, and Dave was actually really helpful. He gave me lots of personal financial advice. He didn't, but he answered some practical questions about, I was kind of asking things like, so I pay down the loan, right, to this. But then I hear you shouldn't pay it to zero. And he's like, yeah, because I've heard some people, the bank closes, a few things like that. So there's a lot of like navigating the technology and like, who do you even talk to split a loan? Because I split a loan because I couldn't, offset the whole loan. And even then just the tax aspect of it, like I just went through the first tax season and now I'm suddenly realizing like, oh my God, what happens if I started recycling halfway through a mortgage month? Only some so there's just all these problems that even the calculation of it was a big thing. One of my side projects at the moment on my weekends is just like building a debt recycling calculator to actually just like do the numbers of,
cool.
And it kind of works. It's really sweet. Actually, a few people reached out to me on LinkedIn and were like, were you interested? I had this guy, and I should remember his name off the top of my head, but he sent me something. He sent me his debt recycling calculator out of the blue and I was like, oh, I'm going to send you mine. And then he sent me back a Google Doc with all his thoughts on it. So many lovely people in the community, isn't there? So, but yeah, just building stuff like that because technology can just sidestep it all the time. Everyone doesn't need to make their own Excel spreadsheet. Companies like Pearl or whoever else gets to it can just get into it really.
Random one.
Yeah.
His name wasn't Kyle, was it?
Oh, my, I'm actually going to look it up. I have it right here. Might have been Kyle.
Because, yeah, I mean, it's been such a big topic. There's been a lot of people around this that have been down this pathway before and have found out like it's actually, really important. And a lot of people get confused and there's a lot of different people to speak to.
Yep. But the best part is it wasn't a person called Kyle. It was a person called Will. I won't mention their last name just in case, they didn't plan to be advertised. But yeah, and it's amazing that there's kind of just all these people out there who care. But it does blow my mind because I was genuinely anxious about buying the apartment until the debt recycling thing came. Because then I was like, oh, this makes sense. And to be honest with you, seeing the money in the portfolio grow, it's only been 6 months. I'm very well aware 6 months is a short time frame, but seeing it grow in 6 months versus watching all the domain estimates on my apartment, it's like really emphasized how smart it can be.
Yeah.
Compared to just leaving it in, offset.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be your big financial goal right now?
It's funny you asked that.
Would it be debt recycling? Like just keep doing that? Or is it like, that's like more that process or the action?
I'd probably say it's just, it's funny. I'd probably say it's trying to get enough money to be able to buy a house if I would like to.
Just so you have the option.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really, and I'm trying to tell myself, go do a pre-approval sometime just to get a sense of how much you'd need, or because if the bank lets you have it now, then you can at least think about it. But I'm always scared, like all Australians, that the housing market will just continue to escape us. So I'm always like, the sooner the better. So it's very much like grind and try and, earn what I can, which is somewhat limited with the startup. So I have to kind of do my best with the, limiting spending and stuff like that. But yeah, just trying to build up cash. I think what's really hard for me is that I'd like to have kids in the future and I have no idea what they actually cost. So it's hard for me to be like, what's my 20-year goal? I think a few years after having kids, I'll be like, I see what this is about. Now I know what the number is roughly. Whereas now I'm like, well, I could easily without kids not work again because I spent most of my 20s working and I don't spend much money. But with kids, it's like a whole other story. So it's hard for me to know what the long-term goal is. But yeah, for now, it's just head down, keep working hard on the startup and, any little side things I do. Like I teach at the university. And yeah, just try and make money.
Yeah, I think it's like with not just kids, but just all big finances and things that you might come across. It's like better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah.
And so it's like just have the money and have good hygiene, have, cash, not debt where you can. And at least you've got it because it gives you the option.
It's helpful being early in the journey too, because you have more to go.
Yeah.
There's no like, well, I accidentally worked too hard at 31 and I didn't need to. It's like, no, I know there's at least 5 years there of like focus at least.
Yeah.
So, just keep the head down.
Yeah, I like it. So one of the things I want to talk about is just automating your money, which is, I think I've said it to Nick so many times over the years, is that like, this was like the secret sauce for me with Perla is like the ability, like put the branding and all that sort of stuff and like what you guys do is like really aligned aside. It's this tool in particular, the ability to automate the investments, the ability to move money around when you don't have to log in was a game changer, I think, in the ecosystem, right? Like no one else did this when you first started. And even today, you guys are still the leader in automating money. There's been some changes over the past little while since we last spoke. Can you tell us a bit about that and also kind of what you think it could become in the future?
Yeah, so I'd say the quick kind of backstory to contextualize it is when we launched Perla, it was like you can direct debit money into a share portfolio. That was kind of it.
Yep.
Then we launched Micro and you could do one of both. And then we thought this is getting confusing now for customers. So the third version was we'll kind of let you have a few different ways to deposit funds and then send them to different places. And that's when we also launched Roundup. And then that was kind of okay, but we realized that was still kind of confusing customers. So the last thing has been a revamp in the sense that now we see our Automate as basically a space where people can go and create automations to do things, can be lots of different things. And we try and phrase things in a much more kind of human way. Sometimes as engineers, we commonly make the mistake of understanding how something works and then backfilling the product around it. So for instance, whenever you set up an Automate, we need to know how you want to get the money in first before we know what you do with it. So that's how we phrased a lot of stuff. We'd be like, do you want to round up or schedule a deposit? And then we'll figure out what to do with it. But like no one thinks like that. People are like, I have a portfolio. I want to automate stuff to do with it. So a lot of it's around the UX and how we phrase stuff. But we've been trying to expand things out. So like we've obviously got our standard cookie cutter things like scheduled deposits, roundups. One thing we don't have a good name for yet, which is like scraping off the top of your bank account. So like, anything you earn over 30 grand is just like we take that and invest it. And we have those things that you can do in a whole bunch of, shares or Micro or whatever other products we have in the future. But then separately, we've been trying to do a few other ones like automatically rebalancing your portfolio if it kind of goes out of whack.
Yeah, so which is super powerful.
Yeah, so the idea is you might set up a regular investment into Perla every week, $100 a week, and we can stack that up and invest it once it hits a good threshold. But then separately to that, you might have a second automation that says like, keep an eye on my portfolio. And if it's out of whack by a certain amount, then rebalance it. Or another automation that we've been playing with is actually what to do with dividends. Because right now dividends are paid into a Perla account. But two common cases for dividends are people actually want those dividends back in their own bank account to spend it, or they want to put it back into their automate, or they want to do some combination of both. And the coolest part about all this is actually really trivial to build. Like that's the best part about modern engineering stuff is it's hard to get it bug free. That's kind of where most of the time is spent. But to actually just go and make something like that is really easy. So how we would see it expanding would be just to do more and more of those mundane activities, basically. And it's really easy for me to empathize with it because in my head, I always know how to build this stuff because I'm a programmer. So I'll go and deal with some really annoying thing in my life, like this debt recycling thing. And I'm always thinking like, oh, this would be great to automate one day. And I'm like, we already have the tech for it. We can read your bank account. We can send money around. We can literally take your pay and send it to a loan and like calculate this. And it's just got to do the thing. And that's kind of, it's just more stuff. And it's exciting and sad how much there should be that's automated in the finance space that's not. Like it's sad because, you want people to be happy and, I wish we didn't have to solve this problem, but the exciting part is that you get to be part of a good thing for people as well.
For sure. I'm trying to think like, I think the Perla automation is the only one that's chess sponsored as well. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure, at least as far as I know off the top of my head. And there might be like really simple types of automation is like put money in, like scheduling a BPay is not necessarily automation. It might be automated in the sense that it's like automating some part of your finances, but true automation, I was telling you before, is like, as someone who uses a lot of technology, organizations like, or tools like Zapier or was it Integrately, these tools where you're like, if this trigger event happens, do this thing for me, would be like amazing on Perla. If you could be like, once I get paid, then this happens. But then if this happens and that triggers that thing and does that, like that seems to be where it's going is like in the future, someone could be like, I have a very odd use case, but I have the input to know that if this happens, does that. I feel like you could get to
that. The big dream I always tell people is that my image, the idyllic image of the future would be someone like you. You've got a CommBank account that has your credit card. You pay your bills out of that. Your company, the company you work for pays you there. You got a bunch of money left over every week, month, fortnight. You send that to Perla. Perla's sole job is to help you look ahead and solve all those future-looking problems, whether it is trying to sort out your first home, pay off your home, not work forever with an investment portfolio, plan for your kids' future, forward-looking stuff, not maintenance, Be cool to do everything, but we can't do everything. So to your point, that is where we like think 3-4 years in the future and think that would be it, is you just know that Perla, you shove money at Perla and it's doing exactly what you'd like it to without you having to think about it, and that every month, like your highest priority is that you're putting money aside for your kids. And then whatever's left over can go towards this, and then if interest rates are high, you want to focus more on that. And if interest rates go down, you want to focus more on that, because if interest rates go down, people don't want to put as much money in their offset. They want to shift money somewhere else. Get excited just thinking about it. So much to do.
So one of the other things is the ability to use AI. It's very buzzwordy around a lot of investing and finance and money. How have you used that in any way?
It's
I know that's like a big question because
it is.
Like there's obviously, just put aside like all like the, maybe where you use it personally for like engineering and that sort of stuff, but like what could a Perla customer experience, if anything, or what?
There's two areas. Exactly. There's two areas that we've looked at it. We try and stay away a bit from the hype because there's obviously like a lot of hype everywhere. So we try and think, what are the areas we know this can be really good at? The first one is our kind of search querying. We kind of figure that, search bars are great when you know what you're looking for, but people often just have questions they want answered. They're not looking for like specifically, I want, this stock page. That happens a lot. But some people are just like, is VAS versus VGS dividends? Like, I don't know how they compare. So we've tried to train we basically most for the listeners who don't work in the space. We take ChatGPT and we basically jam information into it, and we say, here's more context. And what we jam in is our blogs, our help articles, all our data. And then that's the hard part. That's what takes the time. And then after that, you can ask that ChatGPT Perler enhanced version a question like VAS versus VGS dividends, and it spits out an answer. And we're trying to see if we can expose that to customers. The tricky part about generative AI is that it's not really this like controlled space. Like no one really knows what it's going to spit out most of the time.
And from an advice financial thing,
yeah, exactly.
Like that's like very rigid in the way.
Yeah, and they're funny things because to program them, you can actually say, like, people think, oh, is it technical? It's like a lot of what AI is actually sometimes just saying to ChatGPT, I am about to tell you what personal financial advice is. Here are some examples. You will not do this. And then ChatGPT goes, aye, Captain, I understand. Then you give it all that information and then it answers questions. But yeah, there's a lot of processes around obviously putting disclaimers in places, but just quality assurance with customers, getting stuff out there. That's a really cool, unique area to solve it in. The other area we've been looking at is in our little spending product, the spending tracking that we've been talking about for like 3 years, and it's so low priority, but we're really giving it a good stab because spending tracking apps live and die on their categorization. If they categorize well, they're great. If they don't, they're useless. If they categorize 85% of things well, they're useless. So we're trying to experiment to see if we can overcome that hurdle by using some of these new LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini, because a lot of even our old model, it relies on just a whole bunch of training data, which is great. We have lots of training data, but like nothing has the context like a ChatGPT or a Gemini. You can throw out a random bank description of a thing no one's ever heard of, and it can infer it, not perfectly. It's still got a lot of problems, but we're trying to see if there's like a new era of bank spending categorization that we might be able to unlock with it. And we're trying to do it quickly just to figure out if we got to run with it or kill it, because we don't like to distract ourselves too much, only if it's like worthwhile, basically.
That's really interesting. Fascinating just to hear you talk about all this sort of stuff. Could talk all day, but I've only got one final question for you, which you've kind of alluded to, but for anyone that's watching or listening, you can head to the link in your YouTube description or in your podcast player and get some free trades with Perler, or just create an account just to see what it's all about. Perler is a long-term supporter of the podcast. We don't make anything from you signing up, but there is a little deal you get if you use that coupon code. I know a lot of our community increasingly using
Thank you
Perler for more things like I said, like that ETF stuff. Like it's huge because people are very happy to not log in, have a balanced portfolio that they can just kind of automate as much as possible. But the question which you kind of talked in pieces about, which is just like, what do you imagine Perler could be like? Like, because you're kind of at the front end of this. And I remember like watching a lot of stuff with like Jeff Bezos when he talked about Amazon the other days. And he seemed kind of, and Steve Jobs and those types of people kind of seemed somewhat crazy, but also made a lot of sense in the sense that they talked about things like, yeah, this is going to happen. But then people would be like, yeah, but is it going to happen? Like it would be like, you kind of are at the front end and you're looking a couple of years ahead to be like, what could this be? And then 2 years from now, the rest of us are catching up and, oh, that's what he was talking about. That made sense.
Yeah.
Like what would you, if you could put a lens forward and share some of what you think finance could be like, or just Perler in general, like what would it be like?
It's a good question. The answer I gave around the whole we do everything future looking, that's a very pragmatic answer, mechanical, If we want to get more philosophical, existential about it, the thing that probably keeps me up at night that I get excited about is Perler being the platform that opens up finance culturally. And I put the two examples I usually use with this are, and Nick my co-founder doesn't like the first one, is the LinkedIn, because he doesn't think LinkedIn's very aspirational. And he's probably right. The other one I use is Strava, which I don't have because I don't run or cycle enough to use Strava. But what I love about both of those is you look at those spaces, occupation, professional stuff, and health. You wind the clock back 20 years, no one talked about it, right? Like resumes were not a thing that were just out there. People weren't. You think about how crazy is it with LinkedIn? Someone's like, I lost my job today. And everyone's like, let me help you out. I know this thing. Let's connect it. Like it's technology and community, that's like on top of that. And same with Strava, maybe 20 years ago, I'm painting a pretty broad brush, but if you felt unfit, you kind of quietly tried to get fitter and you didn't want to make a deal about it because then everyone's like, oh, what's going on with them or their health or stuff. Whereas now people just talk about it. It's so like normalized that it's okay to share and motivate people. And that's so lovely to see. We don't really have that a lot with money. We do have these like sub communities, like your entire, podcast is baked off that idea, but there's nothing at an absolute like macro level in the culture that just has people being like, I saved my first $100 and here I made my first investment. And what are other people doing? And these people like it. And, it's a funny topic because people think, oh, money isn't really for social media. And it's like, sure, but I'm sure they said that about everything else. Like people aren't on LinkedIn talking about their bonuses or compensation exactly. There's like natural ways to limit it, and if for people listening, a simple way is you don't have to tell people how much money you have in VAS and VGS. But is there really a harm in you telling them that you have it 50-50, or that your aim is to not work forever, or that you'd like to retire at 50, or that you made these mistakes beforehand? Like these are all things that I think a normal person with a cultural change wouldn't actually mind sharing if they could feel that benefit at large. So I'd say that's the cultural shift we'd love to be a part of. And we try and do bits of it, but we have bigger priorities at the moment with just, getting the platform. Also, to any Pearler customers, we've been working on a massive app restructure to make things clearer and a little less buggy. We're very well aware of the app, dissatisfaction at times. But, once we kind of clear through that and we get a little bit more of a foothold, that'll probably be where a lot of our focus is just community and bringing people together.
I think that works fine. I made a trade for my sister's account the other day. It was fine. Yeah, it was fine. But good. Anyway, I like that. I love that vision, mate. I think it's kudos. And I think that I can see that happening in society. Like not just...
Well, we're all part of it, right? Like it's not just us.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. But I can actually see like the wheels turning. And I can see how there's a cultural acceptance around money. I feel like there's maybe going to be two types of people. There's like the people that like Tash Invest always talks about is like the people that just treat investing and money like a subscription. I just pay the thing, automate, bang, done.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the other one that's like super like educational, community focused. It's like someone's like out there exploring the world of money and what it can mean for them. Those are a whole community. You kind of had that with investing, but it was a bit more toxic and a bit more masculine in a way, which is obviously masculine is not a bad thing, but just generally speaking, it was just dominated by a lot of men in there.
Yeah.
But now it seems to be much more open to everyone and a lot more acceptance around different investment strategies. Whereas like in the past, you were either doing this or you weren't. And that is really unique as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
And I'm pretty bullish that there's a lot of people in that second camp. Not because money's cool or interesting. It just matters. Reluctantly or excitably, it just matters. And it's the same with health. It's the same with work. People talk about work all the time. How many people are like, I love work? It's just everywhere all the time. So engagement, I think, is easy with it. But we'll see. We'll see what the future holds.
I like it, mate. Well, Hayden, mate, it's always so, it's optimistic speaking to you. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share some of that with us.
No, thanks, Owen. Thanks for having me by.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.